an either-or equation. I talk a little bit more why it doesn't need to be a little bit later, but at that point, that was sort of, I was just going through like a traditional bulking, and then would come, I'd already figured that I knew how to lose body fat, and so I wasn't that concerned about adding the fat at that time. There were a couple things that I figured out right around these times, and obviously, it wasn't like the day after starting strength, everything, it came together for me. But one really important thing was that when I was less active was the time I was able to diet more aggressively. And this is true because working out makes you hungry, and so working out makes you hungry for a reason. The whole point of working out is to break down your muscle and build it back stronger. And so that is actually my recommendation to this day, is that when you are looking to go to a deficit, the goal is to go to a deficit on your rest days and use your workout days to make sure that you are in fact doing what your body needs you to do. Eat enough to support your activity level and reform that muscle in a better, stronger way. For me, and I think for most people, what you're probably hearing at this point is that the diets in and of themselves became just a lifestyle problem. I just didn't want to count calories for the rest of my life. Not saying that you can't and have some type of good response from that. It just was not what I ultimately wanted to do, and I'd had some success counting calories, but I'd always end up being more hungry with less energy, and the foods that I was eating at that time were not nutrient dense. They were more energy dense, and so they didn't really add that much to my system. And so once I started to eat better foods with more nutrients, I didn't get sick near as much, and I had a lot more energy. When I reduced carbohydrate, I typically lost weight, which is an approach that most people, or a lot of people, take right now, but that works well when your activity level is low. When you start to up your activity level, you're going to need carbohydrate. Now, I would caution a lot of people at this point, because you see a lot of people in a gym and they're drinking up these big carbohydrate and protein drinks, post-workout, and you really don't necessarily need to add that big of a calorie intake if your workouts are not particularly intense. And by intense, I mean running over 10 miles or performing a very aggressive, say, 2-hour weightlifting set. If you're working out for 20 minutes, adding excessive carbohydrate through protein shakes, even excessive protein, you'd probably be better off getting most of your nutrients from actual food. So this is a little embarrassing, but I think it does kind of illustrate the point that this was me at 21%, and I look pretty skinny. I had gotten down from 213 pounds, but I didn't look like I wanted to look. You can see that I have some definition in my obliques. My abdomen is not defined at all. My chest is not strong. I'm carrying a lot of fat right above my navel and right around my navel. This picture was actually one of the big eye-openers for me, because as much progress as I had made, at a certain point you do want to look a certain way, and so that led me down a different path. And of course, this is my phone. I started CrossFit in July, and this is what I look like now at. Well, this is what I look like now. This in December, I was 9%. I don't look vastly different from that right now. I am attempting to gain a little bit more muscle, and so right now I'm around 12%. Some of it is because of some increased water intake related to creatine, but at a certain point, the body fat percentage became less important to me, and performance became more important to me, at least after December. To be totally truthful, going into December, I was aggressively trying to lose body fat, in an effort to say, hey, I lost over 20% body fat. But in retrospect, I would probably do it a little bit slower and not be as concerned about that. But when you look at this picture compared to the last picture, there's obviously a striking difference. As I mentioned in the last slide, a big part of my new goals was performance. And so this is me lifting 315 pounds as a deadlift. I can lift up to 385 pounds, and I had never lifted a weight since 7th grade, and obviously in 7th grade they don't have you lifting super heavy weights because of your age. And I have to attribute this to, one, CrossFit and my coaches at CrossFit, because they were able to teach me form and go aggressively towards my goals in a cautious manner at first, but then more aggressively as things went by. I am actually CrossFit certified, CrossFit Kids certified. I've gone through various Olympic lifting training sessions, so I did go into it with a discovery mindset, and so that did allow me to progress a little bit faster than maybe some people would that did not take that approach. I also started Lean Gains, and Lean Gains is an intermittent fasting protocol where you basically skip breakfast. It's a little bit more complicated than that, in that skipping breakfast and making your first meal a very nutrient-dense meal. The misnomer that you get a lot is that when you skip breakfast, that in and of itself ends up being a negative thing. What the reality is a lot of people skip breakfast and make poor choices, and so it works against them. And so in the case of Lean Gains, the protocol itself is basically a way to enhance your human growth hormone in a safe manner. And then, like in my instance, I eat around noon. I eat a pretty big meal, and usually it involves vegetables, lean meats, or meats with omega-3s. From July to December, using a combination of CrossFit and Lean Gains, I lost 12.5 pounds, gaining 9 pounds of muscle. And that is not very easy to do. Not a lot of people are able to accomplish those goals simultaneously, and so that was a big accomplishment for me. And what's interesting is that while I, in the picture where I look 162, the next picture is where I'm 149 and a half, though I look a lot more muscular at 149.5, and I actually look a lot bigger at 149.5. So that I think is something that's interesting for people to know. I did not do the reverse pyramid training that Martin Berkhan recommends, just because I was seeing a lot of success with CrossFit, and so I simply adjusted his protocol with CrossFit. Possibly not optimal, but I was seeing really good results, and so there was really no reason for changing. The last thing I would say about fasting is that fasting is not dieting. You can actually eat more calories fasting, and a lot of people do that. In fact, that's pretty much what I do. Is I eat in a pretty unrestricted but very smart way on the days that I work out. And I'm on a 3 on 1 day off schedule, and so I use that 1 day to go to a deficit, which right now tends to be a pretty aggressive deficit because I don't have a lot of deficit days. But I do not count calories at all. Basically what I do is just take out the things that are energy dense, like I don't really eat a lot of sugar, but things like nuts, Greek yogurt, those are all things that I eat on workout days that I don't eat on the deficit days. So I wanted to use this last slide to talk about eating fewer calories. Eating fewer calories does work, but a lot of the times for most people it ends up being an incomplete approach. Like I mentioned earlier, fewer mashed potatoes really didn't work for me, and so I tend to be more on the side of an occasional mashed potato approach, and usually when I eat, I'll have a steak with some vegetable with no side. On my workout days, I do eat a fair amount of sweet potatoes post-workout, or just coming out of my fast, and this allows my muscles to get a good amount of carbohydrate. Sweet potatoes and potatoes are not vastly different from a carbohydrate standpoint, but sweet potatoes do offer you a few more vitamins, and so that's why I default to those. Putting any macronutrient as bad, I don't view really any food as bad or good. I view all foods independently and what they either add to my system or take away. And so that is actually what we're going to try and accomplish with this book, is just to talk about what foods do. Many of the things that we'll talk about, most people know. Some ideas are just strategies on how to make the things that you already know work better. Lastly, a lot of people end up being protein deficient because in most people's diets, they are carbohydrate dominant. As you'll see, I don't really argue against eating carbohydrates, but I do take a pretty carb conscious approach as it relates to whatever your activity level is. But in any scenario, when you look at either deficit days or my workout days, my protein stays relatively the same, which is 1 gram per per pound of lean body mass, which in my instance is right around 140 pounds. Anyway, I hope this is helpful, and we'll see if the slideshow approach works better. Thanks.